Lewis Hamilton returns to Mercedes after the Austrian Grand Prix. Stay until the end to uncover the surprising reason behind his sudden dismissal. Just seconds after the roar of engines faded and the checkered flag was waved at the end of the Austrian Grand Prix, the real drama, far more explosive than anything witnessed on track, erupted behind closed doors, igniting a confrontation so intense that it would ripple through the heart of the Formula One paddock like an earthquake. Deep within the Ferrari garage, tempers flared, egos clashed, and alliances fractured as Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc, two of the sport's most fierce, prideful, and ambitious competitors, found themselves embroiled in a furious, no-holds-barred clash that marked not just the collapse of team unity, but the catalyst for a historic, unforeseen, and potentially career-altering shift in Hamilton's future. It all began with a moment that lasted less than 2 seconds, just enough time to destroy trust and ignite suspicion. As the lights went out and the field surged toward Turn 1, Leclerc, from his grid slot ahead, launched decisively, angling subtly to the left in what appeared to be an instinctive defensive maneuver. Hamilton, anticipating a straightforward drag race down to the apex, had already committed to the outer line, looking to outbreak the field around the outside. But Leclerc's line tightened, and the space Hamilton had counted on vanished in an instant. The result wasn't contact, but it was close. Hamilton was forced to abandon throttle, run wide over the serrated curbs, and lose precious momentum, instantly dropping behind 2 cars. In a sport where milliseconds matter, his start was wrecked. And with it, so was his race strategy. At first glance, the incident seemed minor. No wheel-to-wheel contact. No investigation by the stewards. Just hard racing between 2 teammates. But inside Hamilton's cockpit, it felt like betrayal. Not just a teammate protecting position, but one deliberately compromising the race of the man who, in theory, was supposed to be his ally. What stung more was the silence that followed. No apology from Leclerc. No strategic commentary from the Ferrari pit wall. No intervention. Just silence. Radio chatter avoided the subject completely, and that omission cut deeper than any words could have. Hamilton's response was icy. His tone on the radio was restrained, but razor-sharp. "I had to back out completely there," he said on lap 3. "Didn't see much teamwork." His race engineer replied with neutral professionalism, "Copy. Let's stay focused." But Hamilton had already begun disconnecting, not from the race, but from the system around him. Throughout the Grand Prix, he battled through tire wear, inconsistent downforce, and uncooperative engine modes. The SF-24 lacked both straight-line grunt and rear-end composure through fast corners. While he fought like a lion, Leclerc drifted further back, his own race crumbling under the weight of Ferrari's flawed strategy once again. But Hamilton wasn't racing his rivals anymore. He was racing his own frustration. Every corner, every lap, every pit call was a reminder that he was competing in a fractured team, one incapable of managing its own internal rivalry. When the race ended and the cars pulled into park firm, Hamilton didn't even look toward Leclerc's car. He climbed out without fanfare, ripped off his gloves, and marched past Ferrari media handlers without a word. Every camera caught it, his expression blank, eyes narrowed, jaw locked. He ignored questions from Sky Sports, bypassed the FIA interview area, and walked straight through the garage toward the inner sanctum of the Ferrari command center. Leclerc was already there, half laughing with a strategist over tire deg charts. When Hamilton entered, the mood shifted instantly. Mechanics fell silent. Engineers exchanged glances. The air became thick with anticipation. Hamilton didn't wait. "Do you think that move at Turn 1 was acceptable?" he asked, voice low but loaded with fury. Leclerc, caught slightly off guard, turned slowly and offered a dismissive smile. "I defended. That's racing, Lewis. You had room." The response was too casual, too smug. Hamilton took a step closer, eyes locked on his teammate. "You didn't defend. You forced me off. You compromised my entire launch. And this team said nothing." His voice rose, but never broke. Controlled rage, precision-guided anger. "You took a shot at me, and they let you do it." Leclerc's expression changed from dismissive to confrontational. "I did what I had to do. I'm not going to wave you through just because of your name. If you wanted the corner, you should have earned it." Voices escalated. Hands gestured. The room, normally a calm environment for data analysis, transformed into a battlefield of verbal artillery. Leclerc accused Hamilton of acting entitled. Hamilton fired back, accusing Charles of immaturity and ego. Engineers, frozen between their loyalty to each driver, said nothing. No one dared interrupt. Then came the quietest line, and the most dangerous. "You've made your choice," Hamilton muttered. "I won't forget it." And he turned, walked out of the room, past the datasheets, past the team principal's office, past every camera lens. He didn't need to scream. He didn't need to slam a door. The message was loud enough in silence. That evening, a second private meeting took place, this time between Hamilton and Frederick Vasour. Behind closed doors, with no engineers present, Hamilton laid out his disillusionment. Not just with the car. Not just with the setup. But with the culture. The lack of accountability. The absence of leadership. "I didn't come here to be sabotaged by my own garage," he said quietly. "You asked me to build with you. I can't do that alone." And that's when everything changed. Text messages were sent. Calls placed. Within 24 hours, Hamilton's management had reignited discussions with familiar contacts. Conversations that had remained dormant since his final season with Mercedes were now reactivated, but this time with a different tone. This wasn't nostalgia. This was business. This was about purpose, control, and finishing his career on his terms. Mercedes, for their part, didn't hesitate. They listened. They responded. They welcomed the conversation. At Ferrari, the ripple effect of the confrontation was instant. Leclerc, though backed by some engineers, found himself increasingly isolated in debriefs. Hamilton, meanwhile, distanced himself emotionally. He adjusted his simulator days to train independently. His performance briefings became shorter, colder, less collaborative. Conversations around strategy were now filtered through his personal race engineer rather than the central team. A psychological divide had formed. It wasn't just one team with two drivers anymore, it was two empires battling under one roof. The paddock buzzed with rumors. Cameras watched body language. Analysts speculated, but no one truly grasped the magnitude of what had just happened. Not yet. When Hamilton left the paddock that Sunday night, he didn't take the usual exit. He walked alone, a security escort trailing behind, not toward the Ferrari motorhome but toward a quiet, unmarked black van. No logos. No team colors. Just silence. And before stepping in, he turned once, looked back at the paddock behind him, and smiled. Not a smile of satisfaction, but one of clarity. The war inside Ferrari had begun. And Hamilton, once hopeful, now resolute, wasn't going to fight it passively. He wasn't waiting for harmony. He wasn't hoping for change. He had already chosen to outmaneuver the chaos. To walk through it, untouched. To take back control of the narrative. Of his future. And with one quiet, calculated step, he had already begun rewriting the end of his story. Not in red, but in something far more familiar, and far more powerful. The moment Hamilton crossed the threshold into the Ferrari briefing room, the atmosphere dropped several degrees. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Heads turned. The unspoken tension that had simmered beneath the surface all weekend erupted into the open the second his boots hit the floor. It wasn't the walk of a man returning from battle, it was the storm arriving. His gaze immediately locked on Leclerc, who was leaning casually against a wall, half in his fireproofs, sipping from a bottle of electrolyte water as if the opening lap drama hadn't nearly destroyed both their races. "You want to explain what the hell that was at turn one?" Hamilton said, not shouting, but with a lethal sharpness that made everyone in the room stiffen. The words weren't a question. They were a demand for reckoning. Leclerc didn't flinch. He met Lewis's glare without blinking, exhaling through his nose. "I defended. You had enough room." His tone was cold, dismissive, practically taunting. Hamilton's nostrils flared. His voice came faster now, more direct. "You didn't defend. You forced me wide. You compromised my entire first stint, put both cars at risk, and the team?" They sat there silent. No warning. No apology. Nothing. "I had to take evasive action to avoid a crash, and you just carried on like you were racing a ghost." Leclerc took a step forward, squaring up. His jaw tensed. "This isn't your kingdom, Lewis. You don't walk in here expecting deference. I've been fighting for this team for 5 seasons. I don't owe you a gap. You had space, you just didn't have the guts to use it. That was it. The fuse ignited. Hamilton's composure cracked. You cost us the race. Do you understand that? You turned in like I wasn't even there. You didn't give a millimeter. It was reckless. Selfish. You don't race your teammate like that on lap 1. Not in these cars. Not when the stakes are this high. That wasn't racing. That was ego. Leclerc's voice rose to match. Stop acting like this is your farewell tour and we're all extras in the final scene. You're not entitled to track position because of your reputation. I'm here to win, too. You don't get to rewrite the team around yourself just because you walked in with 7 titles. Team staff tried to step in, engineers, mechanics, even a PR director, but it was useless. Both drivers were locked in. No one dared touch them. You keep pushing this narrative that you came to Ferrari to resurrect it, Leclerc snapped. Well, guess what? We're not dead. We've been bleeding for years, yeah, but we're still here, and I've been keeping this place together with both hands while you were off being worshipped. You think I'm going to roll over now that you've arrived? No. I fight. Every corner. Even if you're the one next to me. Hamilton pointed a finger now, voice thunderous. You don't win championships by fighting your own team harder than your rivals. You don't win by being unpredictable in corner 1. This isn't junior Formula, Charles. This is Formula 1. And I came here to win, not to babysit someone's insecurity about being the team's poster boy. Leclerc's laugh was bitter. You came here thinking it'd be a coronation. You thought you'd step in, the team would part like the Red Sea, and you'd cruise to number 8 with me playing second fiddle. Sorry, Lewis, this isn't a fairy tale. This is war. And I've been in the trenches longer than you've worn red. Fred Vasour finally appeared in the doorway, pale, tight-lipped, flanked by 2 senior engineers. The look on his face wasn't confusion, it was resignation. He'd heard the entire exchange. He moved between them like a referee walking into a title bout, hands out, voice calm but firm. That's enough. Both of you. Stand down. But the damage had already been done. Hamilton stepped back, breathing heavy, voice quieter now but even sharper. If we keep racing each other like enemies, we'll never beat Red Bull. You think this is about who gets the prettier camera shot or who gets their name on the wall. It's not. It's about points. Championships. Respect. And right now we've got none of that. Leclerc, arms crossed now, eyes narrowed, bit back. Respect is earned. Not inherited. Not bought with legacy. I won't apologize for fighting. If you want a teammate who pulls over, go find Bottas. Hamilton laughed, a short, humorless sound. You're going to regret that comparison. The room had gone silent. Not just quiet, dead. Every person there could feel the split forming like a seismic fault line through the heart of the team. This wasn't a minor spat. This was 2 titans colliding. A junior strategy analyst whispered into their headset, feeding updates to the upstairs control room. Mechanics exchanged tense glances. Nobody knew what to say. Everyone knew the consequences. Vasour said nothing more. He turned, gesturing for both men to follow him to his office. But even as they left, the silence remained. Like ash after a fire. Elsewhere in the paddock, rumors had already started to circulate. Something had gone very wrong at Ferrari. People had seen the way Hamilton stormed out of Parc Ferme. They saw Leclerc refuse to look at him on the podium. They heard the clipped tone in both their interviews. Journalists had their headlines. Rival teams had their ammunition. But inside Ferrari, something more dangerous was happening. Trust was evaporating. Unity was breaking down. And once that's gone, no amount of speed, upgrades, or strategy can win a title. The foundation was shaking. And everyone inside knew it wouldn't take much more for the whole thing to come crashing down. That evening, long after the roar of engines had faded and the paddock lights were shut down one by one, Lewis Hamilton sat motionless in his hotel suite, high above the still glassy waters of Lake Fushel. The world outside was quiet, the Austrian hills cloaked in darkness and mist, the sky an endless expanse of charcoal. The room around him, sleek and minimalist, seemed to echo with silence. But inside Lewis's mind, There was no calm. The storm raged on. He hadn't changed out of his team attire. The fireproof undershirt clung to him, dried sweat clinging like a second skin. His gloves were crumpled on the bedside table, next to a half-full bottle of still water that he'd forgotten he'd even opened. His helmet was tucked into a corner of the room, staring back at him like a silent witness to everything he'd endured over the last few hours. The hotel suite was immaculate, its windows stretching from floor to ceiling, offering a panoramic view of the lake and forest, but Lewis barely noticed. His thoughts were elsewhere. He'd played the political game, smiled through the press conferences, nodded through debriefs, held his tongue in moments when his instincts screamed to speak. He had done everything the team asked. But tonight, for the first time in months, he allowed himself to feel every ounce of frustration, every unresolved question, every suppressed doubt. And as the emotion peaked, confusion, resentment, exhaustion, defiance, he reached for his phone. It wasn't a long search. He didn't have to think twice about the name. It was right there, where it had always been. A name that carried history. A name that meant clarity. Toto Wolf. The pause before pressing the call button wasn't hesitation, it was gravity. He knew what this call meant. Knew it could be a turning point. And yet, when he finally tapped the screen, it felt natural. As if the conversation had already begun in his mind. The line connected instantly. No delay. No voicemail. Just the familiar voice on the other end. "Lewis," Toto said, voice low, aware something serious was coming. "We need to speak," Lewis said, not wasting a second. "Tonight." Wolf didn't ask why. He didn't probe or second guess. All he asked was, "Where are you?" "Schloss Fuschel. Room 602. No more words were necessary. Less than 90 minutes later, a black SUV coasted silently into the secluded driveway beneath the hotel. The staff had been instructed in advance. No check-in, no documents, no attention. A private elevator was waiting. And when the doors opened on the 6th floor, there was Toto Wolf. No entourage. No personal assistant. No PR director or legal representative. Just him. Hamilton opened the door before Wolf could knock. The two men exchanged no pleasantries, no handshakes. Just a look, deep, knowing, heavy with memory. They weren't just two professionals meeting in a hotel room. They were partners who had gone to war together, built dynasties together, cried and celebrated and fought side by side. They were family, in a way only Formula One could forge. They sat near the window, where the moon's silver light reflected off the lake below. The room was silent except for the distant sound of water lapping against the shore and the hum of the air conditioning. But what filled the space between them was far louder. "I watched it," Toto said softly, his Austrian accent barely above a whisper. "I knew you wouldn't be able to just walk away from that." Lewis looked toward the window, jaw tight, eyes distant. "It's not just the race. It hasn't been for a while. It's the whole structure. The attitude. The way they handle internal issues like they'll magically fix themselves. I'm not here to educate a team on how to compete. I'm here to fight. To win. And right now, I feel like I'm stuck protecting people who don't want to be led." Wolf leaned back, his fingers steepled in front of him. "That's not leadership. That's babysitting. And you were never meant to babysit." Hamilton turned toward him, eyes sharp now. "When I left Mercedes, I thought I was chasing something pure. Something free from the politics. But I walked straight into another machine. They wear passion like a badge, but it's just noise. When you peel it back, it's indecision wrapped in nostalgia. They don't want change, they want control." Wolf didn't flinch. He had heard Hamilton at his most frustrated before. But this was different. This was measured. This was Lewis without the filter, without the mask, without the corporate lens. "At Mercedes," Toto said calmly, "we had our fights. You and I, the team, the board. But you always knew where the boundary was. Even if we argued, we told you the truth. We let you be who you are. And we protected that space, even when it cost us." Lewis nodded slowly. "I didn't realize how rare that was. Until I left. Out there, I feel like a prisoner in a team that smiles at me in public and questions me behind closed doors. It's lonely, Toto. And I've never felt lonely in this sport before. Not like this." For a long moment, neither man spoke. Then Hamilton said it, barely above a breath. "I think I made a mistake." Toto looked at him for a long time. "Maybe," he replied softly. "But maybe you needed to make it. Sometimes the only way to understand who you are is to lose sight of where you came from. But now, you remember." Hamilton took a deep breath, as if releasing months of restraint. "I don't want to fade away in a car that doesn't believe in me. I still want to fight. I still want to lead. But I can't do it surrounded by people who think they know me better than I know myself. I need a team that trusts my instincts, not questions them. A team that lets me speak up, then listens." Wolf leaned forward. "Then maybe it's time to come home." Those 5 words settled into the air like thunder, quiet but undeniable. "No contracts tonight," Toto added. "No decisions. I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm here because you're Lewis. And whether you race for us again or not, I'll always respect that. But if you're ready to fight again, really fight, then we build something new. From scratch. For you." Hamilton didn't answer right away. He stood, walked over to the window, looked out across the lake. The moon had risen higher, casting its reflection across the rippling water like a streak of light on obsidian. He placed a hand on the cold glass, not in hesitation, but in clarity. He turned back. "I'm not done," he said. "And if I'm going to write the final chapter of my career, it has to be on my terms. No politics. No compromises. Just speed. Purpose. Legacy." Wolf stood too. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. Everything had been said. When he left the room that night, there were still no contracts. No PR teams. No tweets. But everything had changed. Because in room 602, overlooking the quiet, moonlit lake, the greatest driver of a generation had decided he wasn't ready to let go of greatness. Not yet. And somewhere in the silence of that Austrian night, a spark had been reignited. One that would soon set the paddock ablaze. They remained inside that room far beyond what had been planned, well into the early hours of the morning, long after the corridors outside had emptied and the building had gone silent. No cameras. No entourage. No need for PR gloss. Just 2 men locked in a raw, unfiltered conversation that would alter the course of Formula One history. It wasn't a negotiation in the traditional sense, it was a reckoning. A reckoning between 2 titans of the sport who had once built dynasties together, then drifted apart amid fractures, expectations, and the merciless march of time. Lewis Hamilton wasn't there to be courted with nostalgia or legacy talk. He wasn't there for soft goodbyes, victory laps, or headlines. His message was firm, resolute, unshakable. "I don't want banners," he said, his voice low but brimming with conviction. "I don't want farewell speeches or emotional tributes. I want edge. I want grip. I want a car that claws back positions in the rain and dominates on Sunday. I want to walk into a garage where no one flinches under pressure. I don't want comfort. I want combustion." Toto Wolf sat across from him, absorbing every word with the intensity of a man who knew this moment was more than just a business opportunity. It was personal. "You were never replaced," he finally said. "That seat was yours. We didn't just keep it warm, we kept building for the day you take it back. George has grown, yes. But the soul of this team, it still beats to your rhythm. We've got updates arriving before Silverstone. You won't return to what you left, you'll step into something hungry, angry, reborn." Hamilton studied him, silent for a beat. There was no smile, no handshake. Just a nod, quiet, loaded with weight. Because beneath the fire, there was trust. Fragile, but present. He knew what this meant. They both did. What followed wasn't flashy. It was clinical. The very next morning, as the world continued churning out rumors and speculation, Mercedes' legal department quietly convened with Hamilton's inner circle in a sealed boardroom just outside Stuttgart. A location so secure, so secluded, it didn't even appear on Mercedes-Benz public sitemap. No press. No leaks. Just a thick binder, watermarked and encrypted, labeled only, LHXR, Return Protocol 2025. The contract inside wasn't just a formality, it was a declaration of war. A 2-year primary deal with staggered performance-based options extending through 2027. A guaranteed integration clause with the development team. Full feedback authority on chassis setup, race day strategy, simulator modeling, and even post-race debrief structure. It wasn't a return, it was an ascendancy. The deal carved out space for Hamilton not only as a driver but as a competitor commander, a hybrid role no one else in the paddock could command. And buried within the contract's final appendix? A quiet clause stating that Hamilton could, if desired, appoint a performance advisor of his own, external to the team, to cross-analyze Mercedes' data with complete transparency. It was the kind of clause that screamed accountability. Not just on Mercedes' side, but Hamilton's too. He wasn't coming back to be managed. He was coming back to lead. Originally, the plan had been to sign formally at a symbolic ceremony on July 15th, with press, sponsors, and global media in attendance. But Hamilton had already decided that was too late. The next Grand Prix was Austria. He didn't want to wait. The team didn't push back. They accelerated everything. Overnight, his new race gear was fabricated in Brackley, with fittings done via private courier. FIA registration updates were rushed through, under the radar. His personalized steering setup was installed into W15 chassis number 3, with new control surfaces tailored to his driving feedback. His physio team resynced with Mercedes engineers, updating them on his new cardio protocols, reaction drills, and neural fatigue thresholds. At the same time, a select crew of engineers began running side-by-side telemetry comparisons between George Russell's recent data and Hamilton's historical driving patterns, focusing on braking zones, torque curve management, and tire wear conservation. Back at the factory, the atmosphere had transformed. Mechanics worked through the night without being asked. Designers huddled around aero packages that hadn't been touched in months. The simulator team, some of whom had only ever known Mercedes without Lewis, were now watching live test data pouring in under his name. The monitor in Bay 3 simply read, "Driver, LH." And in the media center, chaos had begun. It started as whispers, unconfirmed reports of Hamilton being seen at Stuttgart's private air terminal. Then a deleted tweet from a Brackley intern showing a glimpse of a silver race suit being carried into a secure wing. Finally, a leaked document, blurry watermarked, but unmistakably real, made its way to a fan forum. One line confirmed everything. Hamilton cleared to return to competition for Mercedes AMG Petronas F1 effective next event. The internet detonated. Social platforms collapsed into full-blown hysteria. Paddock reporters scrambled to verify. Sponsors called frantically for confirmation. And rival teams? Panic. In quiet strategy rooms across the grid, meetings were called. No one had accounted for this. No one had prepared for him coming back now, not mid-season, not with fresh legs and a point to prove. Not with revenge in his chest and a Mercedes badge on his suit again. Back at the Mercedes headquarters, Toto Wolf stood in the garage with his arms folded, eyes locked on the live stream of a simulator run. He didn't smile. But behind the glass, behind the fireproof doors and telemetry screens, a figure stepped out of the cockpit, peeled off his gloves, and exhaled. Lewis Hamilton had returned. No press conference. No flashy announcement video. Just raw intent. The world hadn't seen him in silver for over a year. But now he was back. And this time, he wasn't here to chase headlines. He was here to annihilate expectations. To burn down the narrative that said he was past his prime. To dismantle every assumption. Not with words. With results. He wasn't chasing redemption. He was chasing domination. And it had already begun. Every clause was scrutinized with obsessive attention. Nothing was left to interpretation. It wasn't merely a standard driver agreement, it was a strategic manifesto designed to restore control, built not on hopeful projections but on a decade of experience, frustration, and learned mistrust. Lewis Hamilton wasn't returning to settle scores. He was returning to seize authority. To engineer not just a winning car, but a championship structure around himself. He'd seen too much, been burned too often, and now he wanted not promises but mechanisms. He wasn't coming back to be part of the machine, he was returning to be the machine. His demands were comprehensive, unapologetically detailed. Full, unrestricted access to every layer of simulator data, across both Brackley and Brixworth. The ability to directly interface with power unit engineers without any managerial filter. A dedicated strategist who reported only to him, immune to team politics. Real-time decision-making power in development meetings, including veto rights on key performance directions, input into driver coaching programs, integration into the team's future junior driver assessments. Mercedes didn't just agree, they complied, swiftly, quietly, as if they'd been waiting for this moment. No leaks. No press briefings. Just a sealed room, for people, and a signature. But the most poignant, unforgettable moment wasn't contractual. It was emotional. A gesture loaded with history and meaning. In a quiet, soundproofed lounge on the second floor of the Mercedes HQ, the reunion began, not with words, but with a box. A plain matte case, set gently on the table by Toto Wolf himself, who said nothing as he slid it forward. Hamilton raised an eyebrow. He didn't open it immediately. He studied it first, as if already suspecting what was inside. Then, with the gentleness usually reserved for something sacred, he lifted the lid. There it was. The exact steering wheel from his 2020 title-winning car. Not a replica. Not ceremonial. The real one. The molded grips still faintly marked with the pressure of his hands. The Strat 2 knob set just slightly off-center, exactly how he liked it. Thumb dials worn down from races in the wet, the carbon fiber still scarred from the day he clinched title number 7 in Istanbul. Toto didn't say much. He didn't need to. His voice was barely above a whisper. We held on to it, just in case the story wasn't finished. Hamilton stared at the wheel for several seconds. The room was silent, but inside his head, an entire decade of memories played like a reel. The wins. The betrayals. The silent flights home after defeats. The iconic overtakes. The nights when he wondered if any of it still mattered. And now this. For the first time in what felt like years, his lips curled into a genuine, unguarded smile. Then I guess it's time, he said, voice firm but calm. Time to come back. But this time on my terms. With that, everything changed. Not just for him. For everyone. While the ink dried in Brackley, Maranello was crumbling, internally, quietly, but unmistakably. Ferrari's senior leadership team remained oblivious. They still believed Hamilton's silence meant deliberation. Their head of PR had already scheduled a content shoot with both drivers in Tuscany the following week. A red suit had been tailored. A campaign called Red Legacy was in its final stage, ready to go live with a teaser video narrated by Hamilton himself, clips he had recorded weeks earlier, under the assumption things might work. Meanwhile, in Mercedes' war rooms, the return was already being operationalized. Engineers had been discreetly told to prepare a hybrid car setup profile for 2 distinct driving styles, one current, one historical. The media team drafted 5 different announcement scripts for various global markets. Hamilton's logo was being resized to fit alongside AMG branding. Helmut Marko had been briefed not to speak to the press. Even the catering team was told to start restocking items from Hamilton's old dietary preferences. And still, Ferrari had no idea. Their internal negotiations team had even prepared a surprise, an announcement party for when the extension was signed, complete with customized champagne bottles etched with Hamilton x Ferrari, the next chapter. A private yacht had been booked in Portofino. A dinner with the Agnelli family was being arranged. But the silence they thought meant hesitancy actually meant finality. Because Hamilton had already made his choice. And it wasn't just a team switch, it was a power shift. A reclamation. A thunderous statement to every paddock boss, every keyboard critic, every fan who thought the story had ended. This wasn't a return to what was. This was the ignition of something more dangerous, more precise, more personal than anything Formula One had seen in years. When the news finally leaked, because secrets in Formula One are like fuel vapors, always looking for a spark, it came not from a journalist or a team insider, but through an unexpected channel. A photo surfaced on a Reddit thread. Grainy. Cropped. But unmistakable. Hamilton, walking through the Brackley lobby, holding a black folder with a silver star insignia. The internet erupted. Sky Sports scrambled to confirm it. Social media descended into chaos. Hashtags exploded. Ferrari went into emergency meetings. Journalists at Maranello started calling their sources, and received radio silence. Because there was nothing to spin. No deal. No quote. No recovery. And then came the official confirmation, only a few words on Mercedes' social channels. He's back. That was it. No speech. No video. Just that. With a photo, Hamilton in silhouette, backlit by the blue glow of the simulator room. Hands on the wheel. Head lowered. Focused. In that single image, the entire landscape of Formula One shifted. Sponsors called. Other teams re-evaluated strategies. Red Bull doubled security at their factory to prevent leaks. McLaren's board held a 3-hour emergency call. Aston Martin's marketing team immediately postponed a new campaign centered around Fernando Alonso, fearing irrelevance. Every single team principal knew what it meant. The king had returned. Not nostalgic. Not polite. Not ceremonial. But sharp. Controlled. Hungry. And this time, he wasn't coming to fit into someone else's machine. He was coming to build his own.